Before basting that assembly to the sail, we'll take it over and we'll align and glue the nylon ripstop patches to the top portion of that patch. So you don't see the white Dacron, but you'll actually see the appropriate cover for your asymmetrical Spinnaker. And you can see we use the Super 77 spray adhesive on the back side of these nylon patches. Then we take it over to the Dacron patches and lay it on there. Work out any bubbles just simply by pulling the fabric up if it need be pulled up, and smooth it out so it's nice and smooth on this Dacron patch assembly. You can see the webbing there in the corner assembly. We're just covering that up, and that line there will be used as a reference for the second patch. Here she is applying the glue, and then she takes it over and then matches it up with that line. You can easily tear this assembly apart if need be, if you get a serious wrinkle in it, and reapply it. That's the nice thing about the Super 77 spray adhesive. And then just work out any bubbles. Alright, we're going to skip ahead here and show you the whole thing with it all basted in place, and here's what it looks like. Now you notice there's a little bit of a white Dacron sticking out of the edge. Don't worry about it.
Your patch is a little short. It's okay. The thick's going to come here. Finish.
So in a later step, this will be covered by the stay tapes, as Deb explained. We'll take that patch assembly over to the glue box that we fabricated to keep glue from going all over the loft, and spray it with the Super 77 spray adhesive as we did previously. Then we'll baste it down to the sail, making sure that we work out any bubbles or wrinkles. Take your time when you're doing this step. It won't always come out perfect because there is actual shape designed into the sail, so you may not work out all of the bubbles or wrinkles, but you definitely want to use as much time as necessary to get it as smooth as possible. When you're satisfied with what it looks like on the top side, be sure you roll that assembly over and inspect the bottom side. And again, if there are any bubbles or wrinkles, pull it up and reapply it. As you see Deb's going to do right here. There's a little bubble she doesn't like, so she'll actually pull it up. This glue can be reapplied again, which is nice. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to apply a double-sided seam stick to the top edge of the nylon patch assembly. This top edge seems to wander when it's sewn, so we'll actually apply the double-sided tape as well as that, obviously the Super 77 spray adhesive, which is already on this panel, but this will keep it from wandering as we sew only that top edge, so we only apply it here to the top edge. And then peel back the paper backing to reveal the glue, and again work out any bubbles or wrinkles. So do that along the entire top edge. Now that that's done, we'll take this over to the sewing machine and we'll sew along that top edge using a zigzag stitch. We're using the 4-point machine or 3-step machine, but you can do this with just a single row of a straight zigzag if you need, if you don't have a triple stitch machine. So don't worry about it. You don't need 2 rows here, just a single row of zigzag stitches, which are about 3/16 inch wide and 3/16 inch long. And then once that outer edge is sewn, we'll sew down each one of these nylon patch assemblies along the overlying seam that it created. So here's the one edge, and that you can see the line that's been plotted onto each one of these patches. And then we'll come to the webbing and we'll stop. The reason we're going to stop here is that we're using a fairly small needle, number 14 needle, with some light thread, and we're going through the Dacron and also the webbing here, so we're going to stop short and actually do a reverse stitch here, because if we go through the webbing as well, we may break the needle because it's a small needle. And then we start here and we just keep sewing until we have that entire nylon patch assembly sewn in place. And here Deb's feeling for the webbing because she doesn't want to sew through that, and obviously there is no webbing there, so she'll sew all the way to the edge. And here there is some webbing, so she'll stop short and do a reverse stitch to lock it into place. And there she's stopping short of some webbing there. So we're skipping ahead here. Here's what the entire patch assembly is with it almost sewn completely. It's not completely done yet. We still need to sew down each one of those Dacron patches on the bottom or in the middle of this sail assembly along their edges as well. But this is with the nylon all sewn down into place. And again, styles may differ. Okay, we'll put that back in the sewing machine and we'll sew along the Dacron patch assemblies that are in the center of this sail assembly. Some of those edges are difficult to see, so we'll hold it up to a light and use a pencil to help aid us in our sewing. We'll use the pencil lines here to determine right where each one of those edges are. That'll keep us sewing nice and straight along those edges. And you'll do that to all the corners. This is just one of the patch corners, but obviously do that to all three corners of the sail. And then we'll prepare for hand sewing by cutting away any excess material that goes through the center of that ring. And we're going to use an awl here to pre-punch some holes for the insertion of the needle here. You can use a palm and push the needle through, but sometimes we find it easier to use an awl and hammer it through this assembly. We're using a rubber cutting pad on the back side, and each one of those holes should be about an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch apart from each other, and we want to basically secure that ring to the webbing right at the edge. So we're just going to do some straight stitches here. Obviously, by passing the needle through one side and then passing it through the other, we create a straight stitch, but the straight stitch doesn't complete the stitch. In other words, you'll see a stitch in an open space and a stitch in an open space. So when we come to the end of this assembly, we'll actually turn around and go the opposite direction. That means we'll have stitch, 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 rather than stitch and then an open and then a stitch and then an open. This can better be explained by looking at an illustration. This is the first pass all the way to the end, and then when we come to the end, we do the second pass, which completes the stitch, and that explains it. We've skipped ahead now. Deb's coming back and doing the second pass to complete those stitches. When inserting the needle and creating each one of these stitches, be sure to pull the twine tight to lock each one of these securely in position. If you have trouble punching the needle through, you may want to use a hammer and kind of give it a few blows with a hammer, being sure not to bend the needle, and that helps to get through your hole so you can pull that needle out. And sometimes it's a good idea to use pliers as well. Here we are at the end, and then Deb usually ties a knot, and then she tucks the twine in between a few of the previous stitches that we created. There's no need to make a knot, but what Deb likes to do is she likes to create a knot and then tuck the thread and pull the knot through the other side so that knot kind of secures it in place. You don't have to put a knot in here. You can actually just tuck it between a few of the stitches and it holds fairly well. Alright, that's all there is to it. That row of straight stitches right behind that ring will secure that ring and webbing in place so it doesn't roll around. Alright, let's move on to the stay tapes. The stay tapes will be applied to the raw edge of your asymmetrical spinnaker, and you'll have three colors of stay tape, preferably usually a white, a green, and a red. We're starting with the white, and we take it over to the sharp edge of a table and pre-fold it so that it's directly in half, so it's approximately a 1-inch stay tape when it's applied to the sail. And then Deb will use an awl, and she'll pound it into the table, and then apply the double-sided tape to each one of the edges of the stay tape. This will hold it in place while we sew. Alright, that's along one edge. Now we'll fast forward and that's along the second edge. We'll then position the stay tape along the edge of the sail. This is the white stay tape, so obviously it goes on the foot. And we'll apply the double-sided tape to the one side, and then we'll peel off the paper backing on the other side and sandwich the sail in between. Once one of the stay tapes are installed along the edge, we'll take it over to our sewing machine and sew a zigzag stitch right along that raw edge of the stay tape or inner edge of the stay tape. We are not going to use a three-step machine here. The three-step was just to aid in our production time. We're just using a straight zigzag machine here. And we're going very slowly here at the beginning because there is webbing there. We don't want to break that needle because we are using a rather small needle, size number 14. We're not going to show the entire process in this video, but obviously you would sew this stay tape to all 3 edges of the sail. There's what it looks like up close. And here you can see the red has already been installed to this edge.